Good morning again. Welcome to the February 28th, 2024 Charter Chat. I am Mifila Fairley, and before we get started this morning, I wanted to give just a quick disclaimer. The information contained in this presentation is provided as a reference only. Charter schools and chartering authorities are encouraged to review the laws and regulations and consult with their own legal counsel regarding the application to their specific situations. Next slide, please. So I want to get us started by going over our agenda. And before I get into what we're going to be doing today, just a reminder to you to keep yourselves muted. So I would appreciate it if everyone would just take a quick look now to make sure you're muted. And if you are not, put yourself on mute. If you have any questions, you may put them into the chat. And there will also be time during the breakout session to ask questions. And at the end, there may be time for some additional questions. As you may have heard when you were entering the room, the session is recorded, and we are only recording in the main room. The breakout rooms will not be recorded. Okay, so today we'll start with some quick introductions of the CASI team. We'll remind you of what's in the parking lot, review questions from the field or from our January Charter Chat. We will also provide you with some legislative and state Board of Education updates and share some hot topics on lottery preferences and open enrollment, comprehensive school safety plan, preparing for renewals, the second interim budget, and then we have a guest speaker who is going to share some information on universal meals. And then following that, we'll go into our breakout rooms. Okay, hope that sounds good. Next slide. So by way of introductions, if you're new to CASI, then you may not know that CASI is a collaboration with CDE, or among CDE, CCAP, and the Santa Clara County Office of Education. This slide shows you the team members from the Santa Clara County Office of Education. Next slide. And this slide shows you the team members from the California Charter Authorizing Professionals, or CCAP. And then I also want to point out that representing CDE in our partnership is Allison Ball. And next slide, please. Parking lot, Michelle.
All right, so we received questions on a variety of topics, and some we do not have answers for, but we are collaborating with the appropriate divisions at the CDE where guidance is being developed. We wanted to make sure that all of you know that we hear you and your questions are not being ignored, hence the parking lot. So please keep the questions coming, and we will share information and guidance when it is available. Next slide, please. Tom.
Okay, and we do have some feedback on some questions that we received from previous chats. So the first one was about ELOP and about its impact on non-classroom based charter schools. And I'm subbing in for Dave Patterson, who's doing a site visit today. So I will pull up my notes. And basically, that only an LEA that's defined as a school district or a charter school that serves classroom-based instructional programs. This is in grades TK or K through 6, and that's not including county charters under 47.605.5. So just the county charters. Those are the ones eligible for funding. The funding formula is based on, in fact, on the prior year classroom-based ADA. So that means that a homeschool or online or non-classroom-based charter school wouldn't be receiving an apportionment. And we have a link to ELOP FAQs, which we can plop into the chat here. So you can check that out. And if you have follow-up questions, we'll have the breakout sessions and we can go back to it. The other question, of course, is the one that everybody's wondering when the data file's coming. There had been some discussion, as I understand, among the department about, maybe it'll be a little later, but there was some anxiety expressed about that in terms of timelines. So they're still, the latest is still expected in early 2024. So not like June. There's not a more specific date than that, but they're still sticking with early 24. So stay tuned.
Next slide, please. Okay, so I want to take a moment to ask you all to rename yourselves. There is an example on the slide of how you should be renamed. So I'm Mifala Fairley. I have my first and last name and the organization that I work for. This will help to get us into breakout rooms quickly. So if everyone would take about 30 seconds, 45 seconds to rename yourselves. I think most of you just need to add the name of your organization. And just a quick reminder that the authorizer rooms are intended for charter school authorizers who are either in the northern, central, or southern part of California. And then we have a non-authorizer partner breakout room for folks who are not authorizers who are joining us today. Okay, next slide, please. Michelle.
All right, so I'm going to be giving you the legislative update as per SCCOE. The legislature is now back in session as of January 3rd, and this is the second year of a 2-year legislative cycle. The legislators had until February 16th in which to submit new legislation. So this is a very long list over the next 2 slides. And these are only some of the bills that we're looking at. All of these slides have the links on the resource page, which is in the participant folder. But at this moment, I only want to really focus on 3 of these bills. So on this slide, if you look at the last one, which is AB 2254, which is by Rubio, this is looking at charter schools and renewal criteria, and it is specifically looking at extending the use indefinitely of verified data for charter renewals. Next slide, please. The other 2 are SB 1380, which is by Dodd. This bill would eliminate being under state receivership as a basis for the school district to show that it is not proportioned to absorb the fiscal impact of the proposed charter school, and would instead specify that a school district may demonstrate that the school district is not positioned to absorb the fiscal impact if, among other conditions, the school district has A, received an emergency proportionment as described above, and 1, the school district has an outstanding balance of its emergency loan and has not met the conditions to terminate the trustee's appointment, or 2, during the first 5 years after fully repaying an emergency apportionment. Anyway, I'm not going to read all of this because it's on the resource page, but long story short, it looks at the rules around fiscal, and it also states that if a governing board of the school district denies the petition, it will prohibit any person from submitting a substantially similar petition to the County Board of Education as a countywide charter school, and would require the County Office of Education to deny that petition if it finds it to be substantially similar to the petition which was originally submitted. It also would authorize a school district or districts in which the charter school is proposed to operate to have equal time to talk during the public hearings. So with regards to countywide charters, right now, the equal time provision in the public hearings deal with the petitioner and the county office. This would include adding equal time for all of the proposed districts as well. So please go and check that one out on the resource page and on and the links. The last one is SB 1409. This is by Alvarado Gill. It says pupil instruction independent study. And it says this bill intends to enact legislation regarding independent study, including those at non-classroom based charter schools. However, the rest of the bill is blank. So it is a placeholder, and we're waiting to find out what is going to be in this actual legislation. Next slide, please. So this is talking about California Department of Education and State Board of Education updates. The last state board meeting was held on January 18th. The next one will be held on March 6th. The ACCS meeting was canceled for February. So the next ACCS meeting will be held on April 9th. And then the last item on here is that last week, the CDE held a panel on the impact of charter schools, and representatives from the ACCS, from CCSA, Credo, CTA, FICMAT, LACO, and the LAO participated in a Zoom webinar. I wish I had been able to see that. Unfortunately, it was not recorded, but please go and talk to people who did get to see it, and you'll get more information out of it. Next slide. Tom.
Okay, just one more reminder. As you know, we've been doing an annual authorizer survey for a while. CCAP was even doing it before we had CASI, and CASI picked it up and expanded upon it. It's a really valuable way for us to know in CASI what kind of tools and resources you're using, what kind of practices you're doing in your authorizing, and especially where you could use more support and help. So please take, if you haven't, thank you. We've had a better response rate, I think, than we've ever had this year. But if you haven't filled it out, please do so. I'll just mention there are some questions at the end of it that really get into some specific things, like you always hear us say every month, if you would like CASI to come to your locality and do an on-site training, let us know. And there's a question in there for you to indicate that. And I'll give a quick shout out. I'm very grateful to be beaming at you from the offices of San Diego County, where we've been talking about what's going on in their world, but also mentioning that there are some authorizers in the San Diego County area that maybe we could brainstorm about whether we wanted to do some kind of outreach for. So do take a moment to fill out the survey if you have not.
Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we're going to move on to hot topics for educational program, and for fiscal. And hot topics are news you can use right now. Next slide, please.
All right, so a question came from the field asking about charter school lottery preferences and open enrollment oversight. Since this is the time that many charter schools are conducting their lotteries for next year, CASI decided to give examples of oversight best practices from SCCOE. So Education Code 47605 requires now, after AB 1505, that charter schools provide a reasonably comprehensive description of the school's enrollment policies, procedures, and practices. This means that simply stating that the school will hold a lottery in the event that there are more students who apply than there are seats is insufficient. The actual lottery process must be explained, i.e., will the lottery be weighted? How will the preferences be applied? Will all the preferences be pulled in first in order? Or how will the families be notified? Is this a manual or like bingo type lottery selection, or is it an electronic process? Once the policies and practices are established, 47605 also requires that families receive notification regarding their rights about the school not serving all students who wish to attend. Charter schools are required to post on their website and provide to families upon application and prior to involuntary removal a complaint form which will be submitted to the authorizer regarding the school not serving all students who may wish to attend. So a copy of that notification is actually here on this slide, and it's also included in the resource page. Any changes to lottery preferences must be approved by the authorizing board after holding a public hearing. So if you have questions or more, then we'll talk about all of that, and we can talk about more in the breakout rooms. So moving on to comprehensive safety plans. These must be updated annually by March 1st, and there are 2 new criteria this year which need to be included. K, which is procedures to assess and respond to reports of any dangerous, violent, or unlawful activity that is being conducted or threatened to be conducted at the school, at an activity sponsored by the school, or on a school bus. And K, for schools that serve grades 7 through 12 inclusive, you need to also include the protocol in the event of a pupil suffering or is reasonably believed to be suffering from an opioid overdose. So those are the 2 things that have to be in a comprehensive safety plan. Form 700s. This is just a general reminder that Form 700s need to be completed annually by April 1st. All right. In regards to the safety plan, so the question is it mentions a public meeting. Is it required to gain board approval? So the only thing with regards to safety plans is that they need to be updated by March 1st and submitted to the authorizers. With regards to being approved in the public meeting, all of those other rules apply to districts, not to charter schools. So for charter schools with safety plan, on the safety plan, you need to look at 47605 specifically. All right, last item on the is renewal preparation. So as renewals are starting up again in July, now is the time to start preparing. Some best practices from SCCOE include: 1, find out which of your schools are up for renewal. 2, set up a meeting with the charter school to discuss logistics and timelines. And 3, start reviewing data, mainly past annual reports, academic performance, fiscal status, etc. So if you would like more information, you need to see the resource page. So with regards to the March deadline, yes, it does. It says that in 47605, charter schools need to update their comprehensive safety plan by March 1st. And that's the end of the program Hot Topics. So I will pass it off to Fiscal.
Thank you, Michelle. So today's Fiscal Hot Topics includes a reminder for an upcoming deadline of the second interim report. Education Code 47604.33A4 states that on or before March 15, a second interim financial report reflecting changes through January 31st is due to the chartering authority and the County Office of Education, or just the County Office of Education if they are the authorizer. For the second hot topic, we are joined by Gurjeet Baraya from the CDE's Nutrition Services Department with updates related to the California Universal Meals Program. All yours.
Thanks, Cynthia. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Gurjeet Baraya. I'm a senior manager in our Nutrition Services Division. I oversee the teams that support both school nutrition programs as well as summer meals. And I'll just be spending about the next 10 minutes kind of providing a high-level overview of universal meals and kind of the key takeaways that administrators should be aware of. Next slide, please. So on the slide here, you kind of see the 3 core components of California Universal Meals. First being the update of the state meal mandate. The second piece, a provision participation requirement for sites that are identified as high needy, really with the intent of maximizing federal reimbursement. And then 3, the supplemental state meal reimbursement that is provided to cover the costs of providing meals for all students at no cost. Next slide. So the state meal mandate was updated back in school year 21-22, and it essentially states very clearly that any public institution, so public school districts, charter schools, and county offices of education are required to provide both a breakfast and a lunch to all students on each school day at no charge. The key piece, and I added this note down at the bottom, and we've gotten a lot of questions around this, is with, students who are attending virtually or are at a non-classroom based charter school. The meal mandate applies when students are on site for in-person instruction. This state meal mandate change was an expansion. You may remember Assembly Bill 1871 from a few years ago that initially instituted the one meal requirement for charter schools. This education code cleanup just and kind of level the playing field and requires for all public institutions to provide both meals each day. Next slide, please. There was some cleanup just in this last legislative session that really kind of wanted to make things as clean as possible for folks who have either non-classroom based or if you have an independent study type situation. And a question we often get is, when a student is doing some type of hybrid learning, when does that meal mandate apply? And that bolded piece that you see on the slide there is really kind of the key piece. So if a child is on campus, at a satellite facility, at a resource center, any type of in-person, face-to-face instruction that is 2 hours or more, that is when the mandate applies. And again, that mandate is both a breakfast and a lunch is being offered. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to have a special breakfast session and a special lunch session for every child. If you have an independent study type situation where kids are coming in throughout the day, that's not the expectation. The expectation is that when students do attend on campus, that they have access to that breakfast and they have access to that lunch. So for example, if you have a student who comes in every day from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. For one-on-one work with an instructor, you could communicate to that student, hey, breakfast is served in the morning, before school starts. I know that you don't come to campus until 11, but you can attend that breakfast and receive a free meal. And in that example I gave, the student typically will be there 11 to 1 is typically around the lunch hour. But that would meet the intent of the regulation. Next slide. There is also a federal meal provision requirement, and this is really was included in the legislation to ensure that folks are maximizing the federal reimbursement that comes in to support universal meals. So what this requirement says is that schools that have an identified student percentage of 25% or more have to apply for community eligibility provision or provision 2. That identified student percentage is essentially the percentage of kids that are eligible for free meals through the direct certification process. So they're identified as free eligible through CalFresh or CalWorks, and that kind of measure is done at a point in time. So just the reminder there is on your screen. On April 1 is the date that you'll pull data to see. You'll pull your direct certification count and you'll pull your total enrollment. And if you have 25% or more of students who meet that threshold, then you are mandated to apply for one of those provisions. Next slide, please. So the third tenet of universal meals, really, I think, and the one that, as an administrator, I would be most worried about it is the funding, right? We know that universal meals is great for students, but we don't want this to be on the backs of local operators. So the way that universal meals in California is set up is that all eligible agencies, that includes charter schools, you will receive the maximum reimbursement that is that combines both the federal and state meal reimbursement for both breakfast and lunch, so long as you participate in the federal National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program, and that those meals meet all the federal and state requirements. So again, this is kind of this is a carrot at the end of the stick. Participate in the federal programs first, draw down the federal reimbursement, and then the state of California will cover the gap in reimbursement between the meals that are served at those free kids versus those who are either reduced priced or paid. Next slide. So, in order to receive that state meal reimbursement, you have to follow all the NSLP and school breakfast program requirements. So, that means that you're collecting household meal applications, you're making eligibility determinations, you're counting and claiming those meals based on student eligibility, and you're conducting direct certification. All of these pieces are core to the success of the program. Because what will happen is if folks aren't doing these things and they aren't certifying those students who are eligible for the higher federal reimbursement rates, it increases the fiscal impact to the state. And so this is really, it's a core tenet to the program, making sure that we're maximizing those federal dollars so that universal meals is here to stay. Next slide. One new change that came in to the education code this last fall, and this is specific to charter schools I wanted to highlight, is a requirement for chartering authorities to contract with a charter school to make meals available until that charter school either joins the program as their own school food authority, or until July 1 of the school year after the time in which the charter school first becomes operational, whichever of those two items occurs first. And so, an example of this, if you're an authorizer and you have a new charter school that is going to be opening in school year 24-25, so they'll start operations in August of 2024. That first year of operations for them, the charter authorizer is required to support their implementation of meals. You can contract with them, you can contract on their behalf and work with them to identify a meal vendor. If that charter school during that first year of operations, if they are able to take over school meal operations, they certainly can. If they establish themselves as a school food authority under the National School Lunch or School Breakfast Program, then they are covered. But during that first year, it's really mandating that the charter authority provide that support. Next slide. So here I have some contact information. This is the general email box for our school nutrition programs unit. We have about 18 analysts that cover the state and are broken up by caseload. But if you're looking for one place to go with general questions, you can send an email to snpinfo@cde.ca.gov, and we'll make sure that one of our program specialists follows up with you. Next slide. I do have some FAQs, and I think I saw a couple questions just come into the chat. So let me address those first, and then I'll run through those FAQs very quickly. So I see a question from Candace saying, so for independent study schools, for eligible students, or for all students on campus for 2 hours or more. So under universal meals, if a student is on campus 2 hours or more, regardless of their eligibility, they have to be provided with both a breakfast and a lunch. So that's a core tenet of that state meal mandate update, is that meals are being provided and offered to all students. From an equity perspective, I think that's where that language really was included. So it's not eligible students, it's all students are offered a meal if they're on campus for 2 or more hours. Okay, next slide. And I'll run through these FAQs very quickly. These are just some of the common ones that we get. If you're not participating in National School Lunch or School Breakfast Program, are we still required to provide meals? Yes, you are. The state meal mandate applies regardless if you're participating in the federal programs or not. However, only those folks who are on the federal programs are going to receive the additional state meal reimbursement. Next slide. Is there a separate application for universal meals? There's not. You apply for participation in the federal school nutrition programs. Our back-end system, CNIPS, which is what we use to apply and pay reimbursements, will automatically identify folks who are participating in both and issue the additional reimbursement automatically. Next slide. Are we required to provide 2 meals on minimum days or shortened school days? So half day, TK or kindergarten. And yes, 2 meals still must be provided on shortened school days. Again, that threshold is 2 hours or more. Next slide. Can breakfast or lunch be sent home with students on shortened school days? Unfortunately, no. Meals have to be consumed on site. This is a federal rule. We have appealed to the USDA on multiple occasions for waivers of this requirement, but those waivers have not been successful. So again, yeah, those meals must be consumed on site. Next slide. And then if we do not participate in one of the provisions, so CEP or provision 2, can we use alternative income forms instead of meal applications? And the answer to that is no. Meal applications must be used to determine eligibility for the federal National School Lunch and School Breakfast Program. The only time that a school should be using that alternative income form is if you are participating in one of those federal provisions. And the reason for that is those federal provisions actually explicitly prohibit the use of meal applications. And I think that's the last FAQ. That's it. Thank you all so much. I'll be hanging out for just a few more minutes. If there's questions that come into the chat, I can respond directly. Otherwise, please utilize the mailbox for questions related to nutrition.
Thank you,
back to you,
Gurjeet.
Mufla. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, there is a question in the chat about the school safety plan.
Actually, I don't think this is a question. I think this is more of a statement.
Oh, okay. Oh, and it's from Tom.
And
then a quick question regarding upcoming CASI Authorizing 101 workshops. Are these open to attend? Need to RSVP. So we'll talk more about this at the end, but the 101s that are currently scheduled are scheduled in, have been requested by specific folks who have a group of 10 people or more. I think maybe if you talk to the person who organized it and are able to get there, they may not mind having you there. Tom, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I was going to say it's probably easiest if you just want to reach out to me or to CASI and inquire about it. Then we can kind of follow up with you and let you know what the deal is.
And that's from Carlos Machado, CSBA.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that was, sorry. It was direct message to me. I'm not really paying attention, but there's the answer.
But Carlos, I can follow up with you too.
Okay. Let's see. So we're ready to go into breakout rooms now. Please make sure that you have the name of your organization in your name, that you're identified by your name and your organization's name. And Amy, would you please put into the chat the link to the Jamboard? In a few moments, I will tell you who the room facilitators are. And facilitators, we definitely need you to grab the link to the Jamboard so that you have access to it and are able to take notes. Breakout room hosts can help facilitate everyone getting to the right place by doing a quick round of introductions. And if you have someone in your group who is not a charter authorizer, ask them to come back to the main room so that they can be put into the non-authorizers partner group. All right, so in room 1, we will have Janice Lorenzo, supported by Michelle and Cynthia. Room 2, Central Authorizers, and that was Northern Authorizers.
Beth Roberts.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
We have Beth. For facilitating this month for the Northern Authorizers is Beth Roberts from Gateway USD.
Oh, I have old information. All right, so Beth Roberts is going to be facilitating the Northern Authorizers group. Jason Murphy, along with Allison, will be with the Central Authorizers. And Bradley, along with Tom, will facilitate the Southern Authorizers, and I will be with the non-authorizer partners. Okay, I was talking. I'm not sure if I was muted or not. But I wanted to have the Northern Authorizers report out. And I think that was Beth. Yeah.
Yeah,
Along with Michelle and Cynthia.
This is Beth from Gateway Unified. We kind of discussed if there were any recent legislation that needed to be added to the MOUs. We talked about AB 2254 and the impact that that's going to have on us and kind of the frustrations behind that. And then I'll kind of let Michelle take it from there.
So we also talked about website audits and how often do those occur?
Okay, thank you for that. Jason, Central Authorizers.
Kind of a like conversation, everyone kind of co-facilitated. I had a question just about how everyone's doing with DA, and Jeffrey was really kind to take a lead and guide that along with Felicia, just kind of talking about their relationship with facilitating DA and getting in contact with schools. So that was super helpful for us. We also had a brief convo about AB 1380, just the interesting significance of that and what was the context of that. And I shared that in my LEA. We've had a charter that had a similar kind of trajectory of county to local to county again. And so we had a good chat about that. And then Allison, I think, shared some information about the upcoming training and getting topics to the group to help them facilitate I think it's the new authorizer training. And that was it.
Okay, great. And I was with the non-authorizer partners. We talked about a couple of things. There were 3 participants in our breakout room who were able to attend the February 23rd CDE panel on the impact of charter schools, and they shared some of their learnings and takeaways from that panel. It sounded interesting, so maybe CASI team, we can figure out a way to bring more information from that panel to this group. We also had a question about what the parents of non-site-based charters can use their educational funds for. We've all heard stories of like ski passes and things like that. So just wanting to get some clarity around what parents can and cannot use that funding for. And then there was a question about when a charter school needs to have their lottery preferences approved by the authorizer. So those were the topics that we discussed. And I appreciate everyone participating in the breakout rooms.
Oh, hey,
Next
Michelle,
slide.
we've got Southern.
Oh, I did? I'm so sorry. Bradley,
Can't forget about us.
I'm sorry.
All right, so we had a couple topics come up. The first one was with respect to the requirement, when students are in TK, do they need to go through a lottery process again for kinder? And I believe there was a charter that had that practice. However, they were looking to change that. And the consensus was it was more so law that they should be allowed to stay in and not have to go through the lottery process. So just really curing the problem and notifying the authorizer. Another topic that came up were with respect to material revisions and removing school sites, and that removing a school site doesn't necessarily trigger a material revision, but perhaps just a board agenda item for transparency purposes, and then also seeing it in the board's action as well. So it's clear both to authorizer and charter. And then lastly, looking at ed code and admissions preferences, and whether or not those should be separately agendized by the authorizer, or can it be included in a larger item like a petition? So those are the 3 main topics we discussed.
Okay. Thank you. And I apologize again for skipping the Southern group.
No problem.
So last but not least. Okay, next slide, please. All right, so we have a survey that someone is going to drop the link for into the chat. It is for today's meeting, so we'd like some feedback on, whether or not this meeting was helpful and any topics that you would like to see on a future charter chat. Next slide, please. And I'm sure Michelle is going to be in there checking out how many people have responded. So I hope some of you all respond. CASI upcoming events. Tom.
So we always have our monthly charter chat coming up, and the next one will be, it's always the last Wednesday, so March 27th. We hope you'll rejoin us for that one. We have our next regional training. We still call them regionally, although again, the practice has been generally that they're virtual unless somebody would like us to come do it in person, and we can do it on that or another topic for that. But the next one is scheduled for April 19th, and we're going to be revisiting the road to renewal. That's one we had last year, and it's probably going to be a recurring topic. So we'll get everybody up to speed on that, and hopefully by then we'll have data files and all kinds of things to talk about.
And I noticed that Allison just dropped into the chat the link for Road to Renewal, which is our next quarterly training. All right, next slide. Tom, you're still up.
I'm still up. So again, and we mentioned this with the annual survey, but CASI can come bring the show on the road to you locally if you would like to meet to discuss. It could be Authorizing 101. It could be kind of more Fiscal 101, but it could be just whatever you think is a topic that in your area you have a group of people that would like to get together to discuss. Sometimes what works as a model is for the county office to be the host of that, and then to reach out to the other authorizers in the area, particularly if there's authorizers who aren't on this call, who are, busy multitaskers with maybe one school and haven't plugged into CASI. It's great. Maybe they can come to a local meeting and meet their colleagues. So we do have two on the docket already in Tulare and Kings County. And they'd like Authorizing 101, but they each have particular things that are of heightened concern in their areas. So we're going to drill down on those a little bit, and we could arrange something with you. If you reach out to CASI, you could do that just directly or answer the survey question in the annual survey.
Okay, great. Next slide, please. CDE is CCSA conference is March 20th, 2024. And CDE Charter Schools Division Susan Park will be co-presenting with San Diego Unified at CCSA, which is going to be in Long Beach. Next slide, please. A couple of additional authorizer events include the Charter Authorizer Connection Professional Learning event, which is on May 10th from 9 to 11. And then CASBO's Charter Schools Professional Council will be hosting an event on LCAPs for charter schools on March 13th, 2024. Both charter schools and authorizers are invited to this. And Bradley from Southern Region, Jeff from Central, and I will all be presenting at that event. And then finally, Tom, next slide.
Yes, we hope you've marked your calendars and made your plans to all get together as a big group in Irvine, June 18th to 20th. Just the urgent reminder is we love your ideas for conference proposals. What have you got to share with your colleagues? Get them in. They're due this Monday. But the form is very short and easy. And if there's pieces of it that you're still working through, like, gosh, I'd love to find a co-presenter on it, just put that in the proposal. Don't feel like you have to have it all completely figured out, because the CCAP conference committee, we're okay with doing matchmaking and helping out and making sure that we have a program that covers the bases on all the topics. So just express your interest in presenting and what you'd like to present on, and we'd love to hear from you. We did just announce that Mackie Raymond will be one of our keynote speakers from Credo. If you were on the CDE webinar, you heard her, but she'll have the latest of her charter research and insights, and that's a chance to ask your questions. What would you love as an authorizer to see some more research on, with one of the foremost researchers out there on charters? So do join us. And of course, CASI will be there in the form of our pre-conference, which is 2 half days. And they'll be elsewhere in the program as well, but that 2 half-day pre-conference is very popular. And again, like last year, we will have reimbursement available for qualified small authorizers for that hotel night, if that helps. So just reach out to us and we can tell you all about that.
Yeah, and that is a good way to get the one-on-one training information. Just a reminder, next slide, please, that you are not alone. So when you're struggling with an issue, feel free to reach out to CASI at casi@cde.ca.gov. And next slide, thank you so much for joining us.